the lectern to talk about the State of Commonwealth Cities reporting.
Thanks very much, Sonia, and good morning again, everybody. As this is a symposium rather than a formal conference, I'm trying to make this a little bit more light-hearted and it's very serious, but not as a formal presentation as perhaps we had in the opening session. So I want to just give you a little bit of a background to where the State of the Commonwealth Cities program has come from, what we're currently doing, and what we hope to get out of it moving forward. And I must just start by saying that I was incredibly heartened by what I heard your minister speaking about, because it's very nice to have an acknowledgement from the political leadership of Australia of the importance of our cities and why we need to be looking at them. And also, Austin, we also have been looking at indicators, so I'll be very keen to talk to you afterwards. So where did the State of the Commonwealth Cities program, as we call it, because it's not a project, where did it begin? It began at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kampala, where for the first time the Commonwealth Association of Planners was able to get into the Commonwealth People's Forum Civil Society statement a call for the preparation of a State of the Commonwealth Cities reporting mechanism to heads of government every 2 years, because it was acknowledged that we had now reached the 50% urban mark, but cities were simply not on our heads of government agenda, and urban issues were simply not being reported on in any way, and we saw this as a serious omission. There was a built environment professions in the Commonwealth, that's what BPIC is, a workshop, and the position paper called for the commencement of this program, and that call was endorsed in the Civil Society Communiqué. It was endorsed by a set of Commonwealth players, including bottom left, the Commonwealth Local Government Forum, local government obviously being a critical partner for us as the Commonwealth Association of Planners in delivering on a State of the Cities program. And the Commonwealth Local Government Forum has started the Inclusive Cities Network in the Commonwealth as well, and I don't know whether Melbourne's part of that. But certainly it's a partnership between the Commonwealth Association of Planners, the Commonwealth Foundation, the Commonwealth Secretariat, Royal Town Planning Institute played a critical role as well, and the Commonwealth Human Ecology Council, as well as Homeless International. It's commonly held that there are 3 critical challenges facing us that we need to address. They are rapid urbanization, rising poverty, and the impacts of climate change, and of course to that we must couple the increasing incidence of natural disasters. Those are commonly held to be the 3 most urgent challenges we face, and you can see the rapid urbanization is really top of the agenda. The urban population of the Commonwealth is growing at 23.7 million people per year. That means we have to build something like 2 New Yorks every year, something of that order. Every day, another 60,000 people are living in the urban areas of the Commonwealth. There are 700 million more people in the urban areas of the Commonwealth than was the case 10 years ago. 32 of the Commonwealth's 76 million plus cities are expected to double in size between 2000 and 2025. There's a 73% increase in the urban population between 2000 and 2015. And you can see in some of our small island countries, and I know the small islands are represented here, we are seeing some massive rates of urbanization, with the Maldives indicating 200%. And what this means, you can see from this map of Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia. This is a plan showing the spatial implications of this rate of urbanization over a 12-year period. The new urban areas shown in red, and it's a very startling recognition of the reality of what we are facing. Now, some of you might be aware of a book written by a person called Doug Saunders, a book called Arrival City, very well worth reading if you are interested in this phenomenon. And I quote from his book, he says, "What will be remembered about the 21st century more than anything else, except perhaps the effects of climate change, is the great and final shift of human populations out of rural agricultural life and into cities. We will end this century as a wholly urban species. He goes on to remind us that, and I quote again, the last time humans made such a dramatic migration in Europe and the New World between the late 18th and early 20th centuries, the direct effect was a complete reinvention of human thought, governance, technology, and welfare. So what then about urban poverty? The population of the Commonwealth is approximately 2 billion people, but 1/3 of our compatriots woke up this morning in a slum. The number of slum dwellers in the Commonwealth is growing at 10 million a year, and the number of slum dwellers worldwide is expected to increase from 1 billion to 2 billion over the next 25 years. And sadly, slum formation is outstripping slum upgrading, with the consequence that many of our cities display characteristics like this, where you have cheek by jowl people living in the most appalling circumstances right next to people with all services and fairly high levels of livability. Climate change, we're all very familiar with, but I think that unfortunately, although COP17 is coming to my hometown later this year, I think the climate change debate has lost a little bit of its sex appeal in the last couple of years, but it remains a critical issue. As you can see from these figures, the difference between some of the developed and less developed Commonwealth countries are absolutely startling. You can see there the United Nations prediction of 150 million climate change refugees over the next now 40 years, and some 707 urban settlements in the Commonwealth lie within the low elevation coastal zone with serious developmental implications, as this photograph from Nigeria shows, where they're having to put these, what we call at home, dollar to reinforce the beaches because of the threat of tidal movement on the existing urban fabric behind. And there's clearly a key role for local government to address the issue of climate change, and I quoted from that Norwegian delegation quote this morning about how cities are the source of climate change, the victims of climate change, but also the hope for the future. And local government needs to build poverty reduction into their climate change strategies as well. And we've heard again this morning already, both in some of the earlier addresses and in the minister's speech a moment ago, about how cities are the key to wealth creation, and policies to keep cities business-friendly and livable become more important as economies develop, and the neglect of urban infrastructure can seriously undermine agglomeration economies. And certainly in some of the less developed countries of the Commonwealth, the issue of mobility is a critical issue regarding the benefits of urbanization that should be being felt, but that aren't being felt. Also, unsustainable development practices as having serious health and economic consequences. We're all very familiar with what is happening in slums regarding inadequate drinking water, inadequate sanitation and the health implications of that, inadequate drainage and the vulnerability of people's living accommodation being swept away, and also the social and safety impacts, especially the gender and youth impacts of people living in unacceptable slum conditions. But what we tend to forget about, that is in the developed world, there are also serious implications from the form of urban development that's been happening. We're very aware of the urban sprawl that typifies many of our developed cities, but I think what we're not so aware of is the health implications of car-dependent suburbia. The obvious ones are things like air quality, and this is a picture of Shanghai and China, and if you look carefully, you'll see that just to the right of the lift well at the top of the building in the foreground, you'll see the sun. And it's a photograph that I took looking straight at the sun, but you can barely see it through the very poor level of air quality. And this has serious health implications because non-communicable diseases, which are cancers and strokes and heart attacks, are killing some 36 million people per annum, and more than 50% of these deaths are avoidable if we can get our cities right. And of course, the loss of farmland has serious food security implications. We also need to ask some serious questions about the quality of the urban places which we are creating. Substantial urban development is taking place at rates never seen before, with new forms of urban settlement typified by high-rise, high-density residential development. And when you couple the changing fabric of our urban places with the massive migration which you are seeing, not just rural-urban migration, but the global migration as well, we have a changing sense of place in many of our cities. So what are we doing about this? Well, you can see all of this thinking underpinned the call that we made at the CHOGM in Kampala for the commencement of the State of the Commonwealth Cities program as a reporting mechanism to our heads of government on urban and urban management issues. And the thinking is that this reporting mechanism will be based on a core set of indicators which are replicable across the Commonwealth. We are currently working on trying to find and identify that critical set of about 10 to 20 indicators that we believe each Commonwealth country can be asked realistically and reasonably to report on so that we can identify trends and pick up some of the most critical features. The first phase of this report has been completed, and the headline finding is that the Commonwealth goal of demonstrated progress towards adequate shelter for all with secure tenure and access to essential services in every community by 2015 is not being met. We are seeing a 10 million per year increase in slum population, and there was a 25% increase in the slum community in the Commonwealth in just a 10-year period. Now, these findings were presented at the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Port of Spain, as I've already mentioned in my address to you this morning, but I think it's worth repeating what the heads of government said in that Port of Spain communique, because to get political endorsement of what we are about is something we have never had before, and it really is absolutely crucial. So here is that statement again, and when I get halfway through, I'll put you onto a picture of Trinidad to waken you up a little bit. Heads recognized that urbanization was posing a significant challenge in many Commonwealth countries, and that new and inclusive approaches to urban planning and management were central to achieving the Millennium Development Goals. They acknowledged that leadership and a deeper understanding of the trends were required at all levels, together with the provision of effective financing for local infrastructure and services to improve human security and achieve the Commonwealth goal of demonstrated progress towards adequate shelter for all with secure tenure and access to essential services in every community by 2015. So that alluring photograph of the North Shore of Trinidad belies the fact that, yes, in Trinidad as well, they are facing critical issues around rapid urbanization and urban poverty. And how do we marry the reality of the wonderful world we live in with the reality of the critical work that we do? Coming out of the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Trinidad and that political endorsement, the Commonwealth Secretariat, which looks after government, called an expert workshop in London as a follow-up to this acknowledgement which we had in the Port of Spain communique. And I'm pleased to tell you that Neil Savory was invited to London to represent PEER, but unfortunately, due to his work commitments, was unable to come to London, but he very kindly joined us. I think it was late at night, Neil. He joined us in a conference call. And what the London Expert Workshop found that we needed to now start reporting to the Perth Heads of Government meeting was that cities are critical to economic development. Rural-urban migration is not going to stop. We have to plan for growth. We need to be realistic and strategic. We need to get infrastructure right, and the rest will follow. We need security of tenure. It is an example of how transformation can be done with very little requirement for extra money. We need to reconcile governments and informality. We need to build professional capacity, and we need to action research. Let's do things, and let's see what happens. And the findings, as I reported to you this morning, were primarily a call for the preparation of a Commonwealth urban agenda, and that's the bottom line, or the headline call, I should say, of what we're going to be taking to Perth, this call for a preparation of a Commonwealth urban agenda. Because what can be done? Urbanization must be accepted as a fact, and the necessary evidence base gathered to inform policy making which deals effectively with this reality. And I repeat again that I'm absolutely delighted to see the response from the Government of Australia in this regard. The second point, the urban dimension to economic policy and urban policy should be built around local economic development. We need to identify opportunities for the creation of new sustainable urban development. We need to look proactively for new sources of income from the urban development process that create win-win solutions. We need to fix dysfunctional land markets and give people title and secure tenure. Local taxes on land and property can then fund essential infrastructure. And if I could digress for a minute, for example, in India, there's a critical upswelling of social unrest around this particular point, where farmers are being dispossessed of their land at agricultural rates. The land is then being handed over to developers for industrial development, and those people then benefit from the vastly increased value that that land then carries, and this is causing great discontent. Don't over-regulate or set unrealistic and unenforceable standards. Develop strategic, integrated, and participatory planning systems which guide development without over-regulating the development process. Acknowledge and accommodate local indigenous practices where appropriate, and assess and manage risks. Emergency planning and risk reduction make economic sense and can save lives. So what are we doing currently? We are currently looking at the second phase of the State of the Commonwealth Cities program, which is looking at what set of core indicators we can reasonably ask Commonwealth governments to report on, and we're looking at establishing or drafting some kind of a standard template that we can ask Commonwealth governments to follow in their reporting mechanism for the next Heads of Government meeting, which I think in 2 years' time will be in Sri Lanka. But we're not going to be able to do this unless we can have further political endorsement of the need for the State of the Commonwealth Cities program coming out of this Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Perth. And certainly I will be very interested to see what your responses are to all of these things that we've raised today over the next 2 days, because the messages that we can take from here to endorse this call for the State of the Commonwealth Cities reporting mechanism are going to be very important. So why do we have to do this? We have to do this because we face the challenge of fixing what is already wrong, and we have to find a way of moving the people of the Commonwealth from a present, which for too many of us looks like this, with people living like this, to a city which is interconnected and which is based on new forms of working and new forms of technological governance, which I wanted to show you a little CD which Cisco did of the city of the future, where everything is controlled by the interconnectedness of the internet and technology-based city. We will be showing you that CD or video at the function this evening in the interest of time. But the bottom line of the message is that in the Commonwealth, the primary challenge we face is leapfrogging people from a present which looks like this, not to a future which looks like a Melbourne or a Sydney or a Brisbane, but to a city of a future which none of us can really even begin to contemplate. That leapfrogging is the way forward for us in the Commonwealth, and it's a massive, massive challenge. So the State of the Commonwealth Cities program is of absolutely critical importance, and we will continue to endeavour to encourage our governments throughout, all 54 governments throughout the Commonwealth, to begin to gather the information to enable us as planners to identify the trends and plot the way forward. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Christine. They're different photos to the ones I was showing this morning. Next we'll ask Paul Jones, who is a senior lecturer from University of Sydney. Paul has I've met Paul a number of times through his work that he's been working through the Pacific Islands. He is currently the senior lecturer and program director in the Urban and Regional Planning program at the Faculty of Architecture and Design and Planning at the University of Sydney. Prior to commencing at the University of Sydney, the beginning of 2011, Paul had spent the last 18 years working full-time in urban management and urban development in the Pacific region. This has included working in most Pacific Island states, including long-term work and urban projects and programs in Samoa, Kiribati and PNG. Paul has worked with governments, communities and a range of development partners in the Pacific region, including the Asia Development Bank, AusAid, NZAid, the